Right. Hello and welcome. This is Christian and this is AI Disruption Talk. Hello everyone. So, today with me we have this very special guest from AI at Uber, Dharmin and Dhruv. Hello. Welcome.
Hello,
Hello.
great to be here.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being our guests. So today we have very exciting topics. One of the probably the next big thing, the big word, all around the world around AI. And you are both of you are very much involved in the AI development, probably from many years with a huge experience. So why don't you tell a little bit about yourselves? We can start with Dharmin, maybe.
Sure. Hey everyone, it's great to be here. My name is Dharmin Parikh, and I lead product for Uber AI. I've been with Uber for the past 5 years, and prior to that, I was in a couple of startups. Primarily, have been focused on machine learning and AI space for the past decade. Really started my journey with being technical. Before that, I was a systems architect in a number of different roles focusing on industrial IoT, communication infrastructure space, and then moved into product management, where we built AI for industrial IoT space, things like predictive maintenance, energy optimization, all of the classic problems that needed to be solved. When I moved to Uber, I led their safety data and machine learning products, and really thinking about how to keep Uber safer for our riders and drivers alike. And for the past 2 years, I've been leading product for Uber AI. Really excited to work with great PMs and great MLEs. Dhruv is an amazing product manager on our team. So I'll just ask Dhruv to talk about himself.
Well, thanks. Also very pleased and happy to be working with Dharmin, leading Uber AI. My background is kind of quite varied. I started my career in finance, actually. I was working in an investment bank, I started off doing kind of loan structuring, which was kind of like looking at models to look at crash risk on if a loan portfolio of hedge fund shares would crash, how you would change the interest rates on that loan. So we were lending money on gold bars and things like that. So it's a very different environment. I mean, a white shirt sort of reminds me of like my time then. And then I basically worked for a couple of startups. I joined a company that was trying to build information extraction, kind of web extraction technology. So we were trying to build systems to automatically scrape web pages, like by looking at them visually,
Mm-hmm.
HTML, and then putting in a website and getting all of its data in a table was the vision of the company at scale. So I was a data product manager back then for that company for about a year and a bit. Then I did Techstars. I was part of an accelerator program where we were trying to build basically an AI assistant back then that was native to mobile. And the vision of that company was similar to what like Alan Kay or Doug Engelbart, some of these pioneers of UX, were thinking about this magic AI assistant that could combine, like each app was like an action. And you could actions from one app into another. So I was kind of like the chief architect of thinking about how that would look, UX perspective. Then I took a machine learning degree, and I built a company around fake news detection. Back in 2015, 2016, it was kind of, we were one of the first research teams to work on that. And so I published a few patents on this topic around automated fact checking using natural language processing, and also things like semantic parsing for like tracking claims, for example. So built that over 5 years. We were backed by people like Mark Cuban, for example. Last company was called Onfido, which does identity verification. So document fraud is an AI problem. So helping systems that people sort of get into banks. How could you look for fraud patterns of counterfeits and forgeries, and recently joined Uber AI. It's been almost about a year, and I'm responsible for things at Uber, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing. Great to have you here, both of you, really. So let's start with Uber and the AI, right? Because maybe it sounds that it would be like totally natural way with the Uber and its operation. Like maybe you can tell us a little bit more, like both of you, where to start, like how Uber integrates AI into its services, how it all started, like where to start with it.
Yeah, so Uber has been, doing machine learning for a decade, I guess, even more than that, I would think. But
Hmm.
2016 was when really Uber started investing in, machine learning at scale, if you will, with the platform investment in Michelangelo. And that's the AI platform that empowers all of our AI developers across the company. We have ML teams that build models, from in our rider team, our delivery team, safety, risk, identity, fraud. Uh, Drew just mentioned some of the challenges in that area. Customer support, how do we satisfy customers when there's an issue. Maps, um, you know, marketplace, especially pricing, matching, etc. Right. So a whole bunch of teams, and then Michelangelo is the platform that really enables all of these product teams. And the journey started with ML models, and then a few years ago we transitioned the whole company over to deep learning. And then more recently now it's like enabling the company for Gen AI. So that's sort of been the journey for the company overall.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So, what do you think was like the original trigger for the idea, right? Because I guess that, of course, totally natural way for Uber, a large amounts of data, big data, probably huge
Yeah.
operations behind it. So, what was like the original trigger for Michelangelo and how the platform is operating today?
Yeah, so I would say the original trigger actually predates both of us.
Mm-hmm.
What I'll do is based on what I've heard, I'll share. But the whole point is, the advantage that Uber has is we have like billions of trips that happen on the platform, and that with that data that we have, there are patterns in data that you can actually glean from, and then you can enable better experiences for our customers. And each team, if it's wanted to build stuff on its own, then it would be extremely hard to wrangle your data, to shape it, to prepare it. And that's where, like, the Michelangelo team was probably one of the first teams that came up with the feature store. Really, that really helps standardize how data is shaped for machine learning and then leveraged. And then the whole sort of evolution happened from there.
Hmm. And until now, this platform is, I guess, widely uh, implemented, right? So
Yes,
still
yes.
using it until today. All right.
Yeah, we have about 20,000 models that are trained every month,
Mm-hmm.
and about 10 million peak predictions per second at its peak that that the platform is serving across the company. So, yeah.
Okay. I guess that this is also related with some probably, initial budget percentage investment. So I was wondering how, from the product perspective, both of you are product people, how you are like prioritizing what to choose currently. What's the, product idea behind it?
Okay, so I'll go first, and maybe Dhruv, you can go next. So I think your question is more about, in today's world, how are we
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing,
Yeah.
ML projects and products? It's classic sort of product prioritization driven by impact. How does it align with the strategy of the company? Really working with a lot of our partner teams to figure out what the individual product team strategies are, and then aligning that with what we want to do as Uber AI. And then it's a classic prioritization that we do. Clearly, there is some element of uh, you know focus on really new incubation of new initiatives that are much higher risk, maybe unproven, that we focus on as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'd second that. I'd say like Uber compared to other companies I've seen, we build a lot of internal tools, and it's actually quite amazing the types of things that we build to kind of make our lives productive, and also scale the building out of more and more of these kind of ML, um, these ML kind of functionalities. So which is, Michelangelo is a good example. We also have a system that kind of manages all of our ownership of our data assets. Whether it's kind of our metrics and our databases, to make sure that really that can scale. If we're starting to do analysis or we're starting to train models, we have very good ownership and awareness, for example, of like where that data is being used, which is obviously very good for privacy and making sure that we're building things robustly.
Mhm.
Uh, we also, I'd say, yeah, on the metrics and how we think about things, like it's also, Uber is a company that touches so many different areas, right? There's the rides aspect, there's Uber Eats, there's grocery. We're always experimenting with new types of business, even business ideas, even sort of delivering things to your door, and there have been lots of different experiments as well. So I think all of those things have different target metrics that we want to reach. And so whenever we think about models as Uber AI, we go in and work with those partner teams and say, well, we often have joint OKRs with those partner teams, and make sure that whatever models that we're building um, can measurably push something in a 6-month period, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally makes sense. So both of you mentioned that this is also like improving your day-to-day operations. Some things are internal, probably some things are related with more like consumer-facing tools. And again, like in terms of Uber operations, how do you like think that AI transform your day-to-day operations, like in terms of efficiency or customer satisfaction? Where do you think is the biggest impact? Because there is so many things around Uber, right? There are like cars, drivers, Uber Eats, deliveries. Like I was wondering where to start with it.
All right. It's a good question. So I'll probably give a couple of examples and I'll ask Dhruv to add to it. Um, I don't think there's one silver bullet from operations perspective. You can see like the fact that we are a digital, physical sort of company, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
requires a whole bunch of operations, and then what that requires is that um, what that requires is basically really focus on some of our core areas. First is, earners are at the heart of our business. We want to make sure that we get earners onboarded as quickly as possible. And so when an earner actually, or when you say earner, I mean drivers. When driver
Mm-hmm.
actually wants to onboard our platform, we really want them to onboard as quickly as possible. And there's a process that it requires to go through. Historically, you would have to go and basically you'd still have to go and upload your documents, and then those documents get reviewed by human agents to make sure that, given, let's say you're in Los Angeles, or given in any other parts of jurisdiction of the country, or the globe, if you will, you will need to make sure that the document meets the criteria, the local criterias. Now all of that takes time. We also need to go get through screening in some cases. So what that requires is a lot of time, and as Uber AI, we are coming in and automating much of that process.
Mm-hmm.
So we want the document images to be captured really well. So there's a team in Uber AI that focuses on capturing good quality documents, giving instant feedback to earners so that they can get good quality documents submitted, and then automatically transcribing those documents, and then evaluating them against our rules and policies, and then making sure that our agents have co-pilots that help them make decisions very quickly, and then in a matter of very short period of time, you can approve the documents. Documents today in US, we are approving instantly. based on the process that we have done in several parts of the US. So yeah, that's how operations comes into play. We want to provide tools to our agents that allow them to make decisions quickly. We want to automate as fast as possible, whatever is possible, under obviously the purview of our requirements that are based on that particular city. Yeah, so that's an example for customer support. When customer has an issue, they submit an issue, we have a customer obsession team that is building technology that automatically routes these issues to appropriate agents, who are specializing in that area to handle your issues, whether it was like, hey, my driver canceled on me, or hey, driver was rude to me, or it could be like, hey, I left my bag in that car, right? So all sorts of issues, they need to be routed to specialized agents who help them. And then this team more recently is building on Gen AI based tools to make sure that conversations with customers can get users can get summarized, and agents have responses based on the system conversations to figure out what to tell to the user again. So there is a lot of acceleration that we are focusing on to make sure that we satisfy our customer requirements, whether it's an earner or it's a rider, as quickly as possible. Dhruv,
Yeah.
do you want to add something
Yeah,
to this?
sure. Yeah, so I think so there's the way I think about it is we have our Eats app and we have our Rides app, and basically there's even now work to kind of like think about this super app vision where kind of what you're as a consumer, what you're doing in your Rides app could affect some of your things that you're seeing on the Eats side. So I think some of the things that I think we think about AI being brought into Uber. I think Dharmin touched on it, but how when we think about kind of like the people who are actually most important to Uber, it's really the supply of our earners, right? Our drivers, and in the case of Eats, it's our merchants. So we think about how can we make the onboarding process of those merchants like seamless. So an example of that might be sort of like how do we there's certain rules about where to drive. Simple things like is your driver's license expired? Like we need to sort of think about that. Also, we want to make sure that when our agents are sort of checking like is this person valid to drive, we want to make sure that we're getting very good quality documents through our system. And so there's an element of is the document blurry? Is the document have glare? Is it an original photo? These are standard things in the document onboarding world that we have as well. We build out. The other thing is also obviously I worked in the space of document fraud. We want to make sure that like the drivers that we're bringing on board, the earners that we're bringing on board, are safe, and that's also important for our ecosystem. The other thing that is sort of how do we once we get an earner on board or a driver on board, how can we make their life really, really easy in terms of helping them to drive and earn the most, right? So there's an element of being an assistant for them, thinking about AI that can kind of help them on board faster, understand all the different kind of gigs they have access to, that sort of thing. Then there's an element of so that's kind of more on the sort of supply of our earners and drivers. That's a whole ecosystem where AI can be applied to help the earner. The other element is on our consumer side. Obviously we have a lot of AI around search, relevance, kind of that's an entire field of AI that we're obviously going to make sure that we have relevant items and relevant dishes that we're recommending to people that delight them. Then there's also all the time when you're on on the Rides app or the Eats app and you see a bunch of carousels or you see a bunch of destinations you might want to go to, you'll notice that in the evenings you'll often be given a zero state suggestion to come back home. You won't be given a suggestion automatically to go to work. And so these are all these kind of contextual awareness systems that are operating at real time to kind of give you help you through your journeys with Uber.
Yeah, it's the very interesting part. But I guess that going a little bit like step back, it all started with data, right? Both of you with the machine learning background. So a lot of people are talking about AI, but at the end of the day, the data is something where you need to start with, right? So
Yes.
garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
So from your data management, data handling perspective, I can imagine that at Uber you have like huge amounts of data, right?
Yep.
So I was wondering, how do you ensure the quality and the integrity? How do you manage the entire data process?
Yeah. So we have a huge data team, that actually data platform team, and that really focuses on providing tools and capabilities to really ingest your data, to shape your data, and to be able to manage the quality of the data. To answer specifically your question, we have a data quality platform that provides a framework for teams to run tests on their data sets and receive alerts on any failures that occur, right? We have something called a data book, where there is a quality tab in the data book, that where anybody who wants to consume the data can see the quality of that data. And then there are standardized tests that run on these tier one, tier two data sets that ensure data freshness, data completeness, consistency across data centers, any absence of duplicates or presence of duplicates, things like that, right? So the point is, there is a standard set of sort of tests that are available, and then for each data set, the producer creates a set of custom tests to make sure that the data meets the requirements for that data quality requirements for that data set. So that's the whole data ecosystem that powers our machine learning platform. But then for machine learning itself, if you will have to have machine learning engineers or data scientists or data scientists wrangle this data and shape the data, create features. So then we have this feature store, where all features are available and then can be accessed in a standard format. And then even there, end to end, our ML platform team, Michelangelo team, provides capabilities for you to monitor features, whether these are features during, first of all, even when you are training the data to understand the quality of your training data set, or when you're using the data in real time to figure out whether the input features are drifting in terms of their quality, or if there are nulls or there are missing data, etc. Right, and then there are alerts that are fired, and then the prediction side as well. We have like how good are your predictions, and then you can map it back to the input data. If there is a feature that is actually going crazy, that really makes your predictions go bad, right? So end to end, there are checks and balances put into place. There are affordances that are available for our MLEs or machine learning engineers across the company to really monitor the quality. So you're spot on. Data, basically, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have the right affordances in place, right checks and balances, you know, it'll lead to a business impact.
Mhm. And when it comes to uh, data, it's usually, and I guess that very specifically with the company like Uber, right? One of the top tech companies that all people talks about. So in terms of, data privacy, right?
Mm.
Bias in the machine learning, how do you handle this one? I guess it should be some kind of transparent process, right?
Yes, yes. Dhruv, you want to take that, or you want me to?
I think so. So I mean, privacy is handled really, really seriously. Every kind of new AI product or anything that we're going through had to go through a strict process of kind of multiple chains of privacy, legal review. There's levels of risk that we analyze in detail. For context, I've worked mainly in startups. Here at Uber, we have almost 6 month cycles of, it takes a lot of time to make sure we got the necessary approvals and procedures, because the stuff that we're dealing with is quite sensitive. And so I'd say, like, from a machine learning perspective, I think Dharmin was alluding to this whole platform that we built. I think it's really impressive, where every single feature is available to any person via one of our internal tools. So if you wanted to look at, for example, data on rights of users, right? You want to, like, anyone can question, okay, what is the ethics of how are we gathering this? There's a chat functionalities, there's a debate, tickets are raised. It's not something that's sort of siloed and within different teams, which I've seen in other companies. So we really have these kind of checks and balances to make sure that basically every data asset, whether it's a metric that's from the data or it's a feature, as Don was saying, or if it's an actual table, there is a clear like log of how that data changed and why that data changed and what it's trying to do. And you can question anything if you want to.
Yeah, and I'd like to add one more thing. So we have, multiple teams established across Uber for the on the subject of really ethics and responsible AI, where we have an Office of Responsible AI in our legal team actually that really guides development from fairness and ethics perspective for all of the products that can have an impact. And then we have like fairness teams, marketplace fairness, and working group and teams that really test for disparate impact on a certain set of maybe marginalized groups of people, to make sure that there is no disparate impact on a certain set of groups of people for various products, and then they have to go through those checks. We do not want you know um, you know bias introduced into our products, and we want to test for it, and if there is bias, then we want to take the steps to remove that bias from our products.
Yeah, that's really important. Thanks for sharing that. Like, moving a little bit forward. So we started with data, machine learning, Michelangelo platform, and this is something both of you mentioned. Dhruv, you also mentioned about like enhancing customer experience. At the end of the day, there must be some relevant either internal business needs or external experience or value to be provided to the customer. So again, for product people, extremely important thing, right, to deliver the value. So I was wondering, are there any important use cases for you, specifically around AI and this area, between like for riders and drivers, something that really enhanced the customer experience?
Yeah, so go ahead, Dhruv.
No, just a few things that I mean, we have use cases in Uber AI. I mean, particularly my job on applied AI is there's obviously we split it into our applied AI unit and then our platform and our Michelangelo unit, which is more about supplying these ML models, making sure that we can actually build them easily. There are use cases that pop up all the time. It might be interesting just to talk about a few that have come up literally in the last like week or two, and then obviously just the types of problems and the diversity that comes up. So, for example, when you are ordering on when you're ordering groceries or you're ordering items from Uber Eats, and you have a certain amount of items that are available, and some sort of yogurt, for example, and you just add it to your cart. When someone goes and delivers that, often these items are out of stock, and that's because a lot of the merchants that we're working with they're not large merchants, right? They don't have huge stock catalogs. So how do you deal with that problem of having a live item availability model that understands how many yogurts are on a shelf? So that becomes an entire AI problem that startups are built on that one thing. Do you go and have people take pictures of the shelves? Do they take videos? How do you deal with items being stacked behind each other? So that's one, an example. Another example that is sort of, when, how do we deal with localization of our menus when you're ordering on Uber Eats? How do you make sure that they're translated in the user language? How do we think about the trade-offs? Which countries are most important? Is the menu, the ingredients of the menu being in the right language actually affecting our conversion or not? How important is that for a decision? Obviously, it'd be great to have the perfect menu translated to a language, but we've got probably about 50 different problems to look at on a given half. And that's what I find really interesting about this role, is that we make kind of big trade-offs where um, yeah, so I think those are some examples.
Yeah. So in terms of like again product people, and you mentioned also that some projects are more like consumer facing, like you mentioned, or other projects are more internal. So I was wondering, on a day-to-day operations, on a day-to-day business, how do you manage as a product people this collaboration between AI and some internal teams, other departments, how to manage that data culture, business requirements? What's your formula on that?
I can take
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
go ahead.
So the way we kind of think about that is we are often a kind of services team to other organizations, right? So we don't control the surface of the Eats app or the Rides app, or the search results page, or and that's typically most companies, right? They'll have a PM for a specific type of page of the app. I think what makes Uber AI quite exciting is that we sit across everything. And so we think about, for example, what happens if where you're riding to helps me understand what you might want to eat. Well, we have to then combine and work with two different product managers and product teams to kind of think about how that linkage would work, in terms of sharing the models and the data between those two apps, and making sure that we can kind of serve relevant recommendations. Um, so I think we typically follow the lead of sort of receiving incoming dependencies from other teams. There are cases where I think we've thought through what might Uber need in the future, and I think Dharmin's probably got more experience in sort of being an Uber AI for the last couple of years. Sort of, we've built tools and systems and signals where we know that they're going to be valuable in the future. A good example of that, just also forgot to mention, at airports, one of the biggest things at Uber is sort of the supply of enough drivers at airports that match the amount of riders that are requesting. Often, people come in from a flight and there's not enough drivers, or there's sort of time gaps where there's undersupply. So we need to build a signal to predict that kind of undersupply. We know from enough, working with these product teams, and also trying to think about the strategy for Uber in the future, that those forecasting services might need to have additional signals, or they might need to expand to more longer term predictions, or they might, if we want to think about building a system to help earners plan their day, even if we don't have a product like that, what might we need? So we kind of try and anticipate where the business might head, without actually, that's not really a decision for us. That's really on the product teams.
Yeah. And what about like the challenges maybe you faced? Because you mentioned, Dharmin, that Michelangelo is basically 2015, right? So it's like 9 years of day-to-day projects. So I was wondering, are there any, challenges you faced? Are there any things, probably you're facing those challenges every day as every product person, right? What are the kind of things, like good practices you can share maybe in that area?
Yeah. So I think it's a very broad question. So I'll probably maybe narrow it down a little bit to, I'll split it by like challenges that in any AI implementation that we would face. One is the need for clean data, right? The biggest challenge that slows us down is clean data, which is really getting the right labels for any supervised models, especially in the core ML space. And then more recently, we are leveraging AI-based labeling in certain cases. But how do we get, the labels, and in several cases, golden data sets created so well, and several of our use cases have human annotations, and humans make mistakes, and then how do we make sure you correct for that, so that you meet the accuracy requirements that your product can meet. um, Second is scale. At our scale, for the Michelangelo team in particular, how do we serve models at scale with to make sure that you know services don't go down and we meet the latency requirements, meet the continue to meet the quality requirements. So the Michelangelo team has invented something we call excellence score, MES score, that looks at all of the um, you know various phases in a life cycle of a model, if you will, to make sure that the model is being retrained periodically, the data is good, the predictions are good, and so on and so forth. So these are the challenges for which the teams have Uber AI team has built capabilities. More recently, with generative AI, the challenges actually go, um, you know, multifold. First, it's democratizing AI, so everybody has now access to AI. And then the question becomes, okay, what can you do and what can you not do, leveraging especially external models, such as either GPT-4 or Google Gemini, etc., where you really start thinking about, okay, privacy, of your data, of your users. Security becomes so critical. Like which infrastructure is ready for certain levels of tiering of data, right? Safety of your, either assistants, we need to make sure there is red teaming on it, compliance issues, etc., right? And then also with generative AI, the problems are it's when you get a response from a LLM, you really don't know whether it is like there's this qualitative aspect to it. So now you need to make sure you define a metric that allows you to really, evaluate these, assistants that are being built. So those are the kind of challenges that we deal with, and then we have to, for case by case, we have to determine what's more important, what's not, and then go on.
Yeah, very interesting. So it gets us to basically the last question. So we talk a little bit about past, present, but also like around product is always about futures thinking, strategic thinking. And you all already mentioned, Dharmin, about Gen AI. So I was wondering, like, this is question to both of you. What do you think is the future of the AI at Uber? Like looking ahead, are there any emerging AI technologies or trends? You also already mentioned Gen AI, one of the things, right? So
Yeah.
are there any technologies or things that you're specifically, excited about integrating it into your services, testing it?
Yeah. So generative AI itself, right, is so critical, and maybe I can share my screen to just see like
Yeah.
how we are thinking about it. And let me see if I can share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Now we
Yeah,
see it. Yeah.
yeah. So with Gen AI, it is actually enabling. It can be a huge enabler for a large portion of our user base, and it could be, if you look at this chart, the way at least I am thinking about this is we'll have a handful of really magical user experiences that various teams across Uber are building that can actually deliver really delight to our customers. Whether it is finding a particular food that you want, or whether it is an issue that needs to be solved. But then there are a whole bunch of internal use cases where we are seeing a lot of value generated, and then that's where automations and assistants. So in this chart, you can see like a bunch of use cases that you'll see where as a marketeer I'll be empowered just because Gen AI has creativity. Gen AI has the ability to create content, has the ability to summarize content, to be able to analyze to a certain degree. How do I leverage it for various use cases, and with functions and tools in capabilities that is available in LLMs now, I can actually go and access my internal data and internal tools to make assistance even better. And then there are a bunch of automations that will go and improve quality of our code base, if you will, or quality of our decisions, and then improve velocity and cost. So in my mind, this is the framework in which at least I'm thinking about, where to invest, how to invest, and then how Gen AI will enable, various experiences and benefits for our customers and our internal employees at Uber.
Hmm? Uh, Thank you for that. Very interesting. So, from future and applied AI, Dhruv, like, what's your opinion on this? What are the, let's say, what are the directions you're looking
Yeah,
into?
yeah. I think what Gen AI enables is this element, and I talked about my history of this trying to build this magical assistant, right? That could kind of think about what you wanted, was a companion to you. I think right now the Uber app, we obviously have Eats, we have grocery, we have freight, we have got so many different elements of that. Even people don't even know about in the app itself. We've got business um, product as well. Got multiple different kind of elements of how you could get access to Uber as a user. And then there's also the element of as a earner, um, looking to earn money from Uber, right? You can obviously be a career, you can be a driver. There's multiple other things you could do, right? And I think thinking about Uber as an earnings platform, right? How can you earn via Uber? And then thinking about from a user perspective, a platform, a kind of a super app that kind of helps you to eat and travel and get things delivered. This, I think, all of that functionality right now, the paradigms that we're all used to are search, right? We sort of tap on things, we type things in. Um, um, what I think about is there's two elements which I find exciting. One of them is contextual awareness. So almost like this element of knowing what you might want to do next without you even sort of thinking. It's providing you the suggestions. It's speaking to you. It's thinking about what you might like. It's understanding that actually, like, this is the way, this is the thing that you might want to go to, or that from your last patterns, like you actually, it's good to suggest you more healthy options. Right now, that onus is on the user to go through that, and that's with most apps, right? So I think about that kind of moving to this more like sort of predictive assistant capability. I think the other thing I also think about, which is what obviously Gen AI is allowing, is the conversational interface, right? Conversational ways of searching and finding things. And with particularly with us, right? We have a huge catalog of merchants, things that you could search for. We also have a lot of complexity. If you're thinking about, you are going to build an assistant for a driver and owner, like, there's considerations, right? They're on the road. There are other things that we need to think about to make sure that any assistant experience that we build is kind of holistic, right? It's not an assistant for this, an assistant for support, an assistant for ordering, and we're sort of trying to think about a strategy where all these different services can kind of speak to each other. I don't know when that will come, but I think it's a really exciting thing to think about. I would say, finally say, like, I think the thing that I also find exciting about Uber, that's actually not necessarily the sexy Gen AI stuff, but even sort of older sort of algorithms and systems like Markov processes or solver functions or simulators, right? We have so many complex signals that are taking place. If you're predicting or trying to optimize sort of like delivery times, for example, right? You've got so many factors at play. There's this many drivers, there's many riders, there's many requests taking place, different areas. Just how do you even deal with that with sort of older mechanisms? I find that really interesting as well. Like, how do you take decisions on that in real time? And that doesn't really need Gen AI, but it's very exciting to think about for more complex modeling systems.
Yeah, yeah. That's super interesting. Thank you very much for that. With that being said, we are almost like 45 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, for me, like, one of the insights is definitely you need to start with data for sure. You need to keep building this data culture. Even like maybe a couple of years process, at the end of the day, it's not only Gen AI, which is like huge opportunity, but also like classical data and machine learning that will still be relevant in future.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for your next projects. Thanks a lot for sharing all the insights, Dharmin. Thank you very much, Dhruv. It was a huge pleasure for having you here. So thank you very much.
Likewise. Thank
So
you.
much. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.